My name is Vivian Harrington, and I'm a systems architect at Trio Tech, where corporate politics flow like overpriced coffee from the executive break room. Picture this: glass towers, open-plan offices designed by people who clearly never worked in them, and meeting rooms named after tech pioneers who'd probably weep at what we've become. The day everything started, I was debugging a particularly stubborn API integration while nursing my third espresso. Our quarterly review meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., one of those mandatory performance theatrics where teams present their achievements to leadership like gladiators seeking imperial approval. My team had been working on the Morrison client integration project for 3 months. We'd built something elegant, efficient, and frankly brilliant, a seamless data pipeline that could handle Morrison's complex inventory management across 12 different platforms. It was the kind of technical poetry that made my engineering heart sing. The project had been my brainchild from the beginning. I'd spent countless evenings analyzing Morrison's legacy systems, identifying bottlenecks in their current workflows, and designing an architecture that could scale with their ambitious expansion plans. My team, brilliant engineers like Amit Singh, our database specialist who could optimize queries in his sleep, and Rebecca Cross, whose front-end wizardry made complex data interactions feel like child's play, had poured their souls into this project. But when presentation time came, our manager, James Caldwell, a man who pronounced agile like it was a foreign delicacy he'd never actually tasted, stood before the executive panel with his practiced smile. James had arrived at Trio Tech 6 months ago with an MBA from a school whose primary qualification seemed to be expensive tuition, and he'd been systematically repositioning himself as the visionary behind every successful project that crossed his desk. The Morrison integration is proceeding smoothly, he began, clicking to a slide that showcased our architecture diagrams. However, I've made the strategic decision to transition leadership of this project to Team Alpha. They've got stronger leadership capabilities for this kind of complex initiative. The words hit like a physical blow. Team Alpha, led by the perpetually confident Thomas Brighton, occupied the coveted corner of our floor, the space with actual windows and ergonomic chairs that didn't squeak like dying mice. Thomas had cultivated relationships with senior leadership through his uncanny ability to be present at every company social event, golf outing, and innovation brainstorming session that involved free catered lunch. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, not the espresso, but that familiar sensation of watching your work being gift-wrapped for someone else's career advancement. Team Alpha had been struggling with their own client deliverables for weeks. Their strong leadership apparently consisted of scheduling more meetings about meetings and creating elaborate project management dashboards that tracked everything except actual progress. The room nodded approvingly. Executive heads bobbed like dashboard ornaments on a bumpy road. Our VP of Engineering, Robert Finch, leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of someone who believed he'd just witnessed strategic thinking in action. James continued his performance, explaining how Team Alpha would bring fresh perspective and proven leadership methodologies to our project. I sat there, fingers interlaced, watching 3 months of my team's work being redistributed like Halloween candy. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably. Jessica from QA caught my eye with a look that said, "This is insane," while Miguel from DevOps just stared at his laptop screen, probably updating his LinkedIn profile. After the meeting, I approached James privately in his glass-walled office, decorated with motivational posters featuring eagles and mountain climbers, the kind of decor that screamed I read leadership blogs during lunch breaks. "The Morrison integration is nearly complete," I said, keeping my voice level. "My team understands every nuance of their system architecture. We've already solved the data synchronization challenges that took their previous vendor 8 months to identify." He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit that made him look like he was constantly choking on his own authority. "Vivian, you're technically brilliant, but leadership requires vision. Thomas has that strategic mindset we need for high-stakes client relationships. Plus, his team has experience with enterprise-level deployments." Strategic mindset. That's corporate speak for plays golf with the right people. I wanted to point out that Team Alpha's last enterprise-level deployment had been a customer portal that crashed every time more than 50 users logged in simultaneously, but I bit my tongue. Sometimes silence is more powerful than truth. That evening, I made a decision that would either end my career or redefine it. I requested to work remotely for the next 2 weeks, citing the need to focus on transition documentation and knowledge transfer. James approved it immediately, probably relieved to have one less dissenting voice in his meetings. But I had discovered something troubling during my final code review, something that made Team Alpha's involvement infinitely more dangerous than simple corporate politics. Hidden in our project repository, I'd found traces of unauthorized access attempts. Someone had been probing our system design, downloading architectural documents, and copying code snippets. The digital fingerprints were subtle but unmistakable to someone who understood both systems security and human nature. Thomas Brighton's team hadn't just been assigned to take over our project, they'd been studying it for weeks, preparing to claim ownership of innovations they couldn't replicate on their own. This wasn't corporate incompetence, it was calculated theft dressed up as management strategy. What James didn't know was that I'd been quietly maintaining my own backup of the Morrison project, every line of code, every database schema, every integration point meticulously documented in my personal development environment. Call it paranoia, call it professional prudence, but in 15 years of tech work, I'd learned that the only person you can trust with your work is yourself. From my home office, I watched Team Alpha's daily stand-ups through our company's transparent meeting culture. Thomas Brighton led these sessions with the enthusiasm of someone who'd read exactly one book about leadership and decided he was ready to conquer corporate America. They spent their first week trying to understand what we'd built, their second week debating whether to rebuild it entirely. Meanwhile, I conducted my own investigation. Late-night security audits revealed the full scope of Team Alpha's espionage operation. They hadn't just stolen our current work, they'd been systematically harvesting intellectual property from multiple projects across the engineering division. Thomas had cultivated relationships not just with executives, but with junior developers desperate for mentorship, extracting technical insights under the guise of cross-team collaboration. The evidence was damning: unauthorized repository access, copied code with minimal modifications, and a pattern of project takeovers that coincided suspiciously with major client deliverables. Team Alpha wasn't just incompetent, they were running a sophisticated operation to monetize other people's innovations. But I also worked on something else. Not on transition documentation, on completion. 18-hour days fueled by determination and entirely too much coffee. I refined our integration, added the final security protocols that would make any attempted theft immediately detectable, and conducted end-to-end testing that would make NASA jealous. I also implemented something special, a series of hidden authentication protocols that would verify the system's legitimate ownership. If anyone tried to replicate our work without proper authorization, the system would not only fail to function properly but would also generate detailed logs of the attempted theft. It was digital watermarking at its most elegant, invisible until needed, irrefutable when activated. By day 8, I had something that was not just functional but beautiful, a complete, production-ready system that could handle Morrison's data flows like a symphony conductor managing a 100-piece orchestra. Every edge case anticipated, every potential failure point fortified, and every intellectual property concern addressed through technological innovation. On day 10, I sent a single email to Morrison's technical team: system ready for final testing and deployment. Please confirm your availability for launch sequence. The response came within an hour. Morrison's CTO, Alexander Stone, called me directly, not through official channels, not through James, but straight to my personal work line. "Vivian, this is incredible. We've been testing your integration all morning, and honestly, it's exactly what we specified and more. The performance metrics are exceeding our projections by 40%. Can we schedule deployment for this afternoon?" That's when things got interesting. At 3:47 p.m., while I was walking Alexander's team through the deployment process, my phone erupted with notifications. James was calling, texting, sending urgent Slack messages that grew increasingly frantic with each unanswered attempt. But the real fireworks started when Team Alpha attempted to demonstrate their enhanced version of the Morrison integration to Robert Finch later that week. Their stolen code, modified just enough to avoid obvious plagiarism detection, failed spectacularly when it encountered my hidden authentication protocols. The system didn't just crash, it generated a comprehensive report detailing every unauthorized access attempt, every copied file, and every piece of intellectual property that had been appropriated without permission. The meeting, according to Rebecca who heard it through the open office acoustics, was legendary. Thomas Brighton's confident presentation dissolved into technical gibberish as he tried to explain why their innovative enhancements were causing cascade failures across multiple system components. Robert Finch, who might not understand code architecture but definitely understood when he was being manipulated, demanded immediate explanations. Finally, James called the landline in my home office, his voice cracking like a teenager asking someone to prom. how did you deliver this alone? Gone was the corporate smoothness, replaced by raw panic. Morrison is saying the system is complete and ready for production. They're asking about timeline accelerations and additional features. But Thomas is telling me their version isn't working, and there are security concerns about unauthorized access. What the hell is happening? I let the silence stretch long enough for him to marinate in his confusion. I finished the project, I said simply. You know, the one with stronger leadership requirements. Oh, and I also discovered some interesting patterns in our code repository access logs. Would you like me to send those to IT security, or would you prefer to handle that internally? The pause that followed was so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Vivian, James said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, we need to talk. The next day, our company Slack channel lit up like a Christmas tree. Alexandra Stone had posted a LinkedIn update praising Trio Tech's exceptional technical execution and specifically mentioning my outstanding individual contribution to a complex integration challenge. She tagged our CEO, mentioned potential expansion opportunities, and used phrases like industry-leading innovation and partnership excellence. But the real earthquake happened behind closed doors. My comprehensive security audit, which I formally submitted to IT and legal departments, triggered an immediate investigation into Team Alpha's operations. Within 48 hours, Thomas Brighton was placed on administrative leave pending a full review of intellectual property violations. The investigation revealed systematic theft spanning 18 months, affecting 7 different client projects, and involving fraudulent billing practices that had cost Trio Tech both money and reputation. Thomas hadn't just been stealing code, he'd been selling consulting services to external clients using proprietary solutions developed by other teams. The scope was staggering. Internal audit discovered that Thomas had established a shell consulting company, Brighton Technical Solutions, operating from a virtual office address. He'd been moonlighting as a freelance architect, bidding on projects using stolen Trio Tech intellectual property, then delivering solutions that were essentially copy-paste jobs with minimal modifications. His client list included 2 direct competitors and several firms in adjacent industries, companies that had unknowingly purchased our innovations at discount prices. The financial impact was severe enough to trigger an emergency board meeting. Our legal team estimated damages in the mid-6 figures, not counting potential client defections and reputation harm. More troubling, some of Thomas's external clients had incorporated our stolen solutions into their own systems, creating a web of intellectual property contamination that would take months to untangle. But here's where my security protocols proved their worth beyond simple detection. The digital watermarking I'd embedded in our systems didn't just identify theft, it provided forensic quality evidence of exactly what had been stolen, when, and how it was being used. Our legal team described it as the most comprehensive intellectual property documentation they'd ever seen in a corporate theft case. The aftermath was swift and surprisingly dignified. James requested a private meeting, this time in person, where he actually apologized, a genuine, uncomfortable apology that felt like watching someone swallow glass. He'd been manipulated as much as anyone, seduced by Thomas's confident presentations and promises of enhanced team performance. I should have trusted your technical judgment, he admitted, removing his tie entirely in what seemed like a symbolic gesture. I got caught up in the politics and forgot that good engineering speaks for itself. Team Alpha was disbanded entirely. Thomas Brighton was terminated for cause, along with 2 junior developers who had been complicit in the intellectual property theft. The remaining team members were redistributed across other projects, where they could contribute honestly to legitimate work. I found myself with a new title, Principal Systems Architect, reporting directly to the VP of Engineering. But more importantly, I was given explicit authority to implement comprehensive security protocols across all engineering teams, ensuring that intellectual property theft would be immediately detectable in the future. My original team was reassembled with additional resources and a charter to lead Trio Tech's most challenging technical initiatives. Amit and Rebecca were promoted to senior positions, and we were authorized to recruit additional talent to support our expanding responsibilities. Morrison became our biggest client advocate, leading to 3 additional enterprise contracts within the quarter. Alexander Stone and I developed a professional relationship built on mutual respect and shared appreciation for systems that actually work. She even offered me a position with Morrison, which I politely declined. I had unfinished business at Trio Tech. The real victory wasn't the promotion or the salary bump, though both were substantial. It was the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, competence speaks louder than corporate politics, and that intellectual integrity, properly defended, can triumph over sophisticated theft. The Morrison Project became a case study within Trio Tech, featured in our internal engineering newsletter and cited in several industry publications. Alexander Stone presented our collaboration at the National Enterprise Technology Conference, describing it as a masterclass in individual technical excellence combined with ethical project stewardship. The attention attracted recruitment inquiries from several Fortune 500 companies, though I found myself surprisingly content with my evolved role at Trio Tech. The incident also sparked broader industry conversations about intellectual property protection in collaborative development environments. I was invited to speak at 3 technical conferences about implementing security protocols that protect innovation without stifling teamwork. The presentations were well received, leading to consulting opportunities that I carefully balanced with my primary responsibilities. More personally, the experience taught me that technical brilliance means little without the courage to defend it. I'd always been comfortable solving complex problems in isolation, but learning to navigate corporate politics while maintaining ethical standards proved to be its own kind of engineering challenge, one requiring different algorithms but equally precise execution. But perhaps most importantly, the incident led to company-wide changes in how technical leadership was evaluated and assigned. Robert Finch implemented new policies requiring technical demonstrations for any project reassignments, ensuring that engineering decisions would be made by people who actually understood engineering. 6 months later, I still work from home most days, not out of spite, but because I've learned that the best work often happens away from the performance theater of corporate life. My coffee consumption has decreased to reasonable levels, though I maintain an emergency espresso reserve for deadline emergencies. James eventually found his footing as a middle manager in a different division, where his skills in meeting orchestration could flourish without technical oversight responsibilities. He learned from the experience, becoming more collaborative and significantly more humble in his approach to leadership. We exchange polite nods in the hallway and maintain the kind of professional relationship that acknowledges shared history without dwelling on it. The Morrison integration still runs flawlessly, processing millions of data points daily with the quiet efficiency of good engineering. I built additional security monitoring into all our major systems, creating a digital immune system that protects intellectual property while enabling legitimate collaboration. Thomas Brighton, I heard through professional networks, eventually found work at a smaller firm where his charm could be properly channeled and his technical limitations more closely supervised. The legal proceedings against him were settled quietly, but the industry has a long memory for intellectual property violations. Sometimes I check the system logs just to watch it work, a digital symphony playing in servers across 3 continents, proof that individual brilliance, properly applied and ethically defended, can indeed move mountains. Or at least, move data while protecting the people who create it. Which, in our industry, amounts to the same thing. The security protocols I implemented have since prevented 3 additional attempts at intellectual property theft, validating the investment in digital watermarking and access monitoring. More importantly, they've created a culture where technical innovation is protected and properly attributed, encouraging the kind of creative risk-taking that drives genuine progress. One particularly satisfying incident occurred 4 months after the Thomas Brighton affair. A developer from our Austin office attempted to copy architectural patterns from my Morrison integration for use in a personal side project. The security system detected the unauthorized usage within hours, but instead of triggering punitive measures, it initiated an educational protocol I designed. The developer received an automated message explaining intellectual property policies, along with resources for creating similar solutions through legitimate research and development. The result was enlightening. Rather than facing disciplinary action, the developer approached me directly to discuss collaboration opportunities. We ended up co-developing a generalized version of the Morrison architecture that could be released as open-source software, properly attributed and legally cleared. The project became one of Trio Tech's most successful community contributions, generating positive press and attracting top-tier engineering talent who wanted to work for a company that balanced innovation protection with knowledge sharing. My home office still overlooks the same view, but now it's equipped with multiple monitors displaying security dashboards alongside architectural diagrams. I've become something of an internal consultant on technical security, helping other teams protect their innovations while fostering legitimate collaboration. The work has evolved from pure systems architecture to something more holistic, designing not just technical solutions, but the cultural and procedural frameworks that sustain them. The coffee is still excellent, the work is still challenging, and the satisfaction of building systems that endure, and protecting the people who build them, remains as fulfilling as ever.